Welcome to Untold Tales. In the rich and mystical folklore of India, there are stories that blur the line between the spiritual and the supernatural. One such chilling tale is about a boy who, through the ancient practice of Yakshini Sadhana, summoned a powerful Yakshini and ultimately made her his wife. Yakshini Sadhana is an esoteric and dangerous form of tantric practice aimed at invoking a Yakshini, celestial, yet often feared, female spirits known for their beauty and power. These spirits, deeply connected to nature, are said to grant their devotees immense wealth, power, and even companionship, but not without a price. The tale that follows shows how delving into such practices can have unpredictable and terrifying consequences. Prepare yourself for a journey into a world where the unseen meets the earthly, where devotion can bring both fortune and doom. Hello. In this desolate place, John was sitting in a meditative posture inside a circular formation, deeply engrossed in his practice. It was his 10th night, and he was just one day away from completing a ritual that was supposed to change his life. The ever-growing darkness and cold winds tried to disturb him, but John remained steadfast. Continuous chants flowed from his lips as if they were protecting him from some unseen force. But that night, something unusual was happening. John felt as though some invisible presence was hovering around him. He could hear the growling of wild animals as if they were right next to him, creeping over his skin. He began to feel a strange tightness around his neck, as though someone had grabbed him tightly. His breath started to choke, but he didn't stop his chants. Only one name echoed in his meditation: Lisa. Lisa wasn't an ordinary woman. She was a Yakshini, a dangerous and unpredictable spirit. John was convinced that he would make her his wife. Since childhood, he had heard tales of Yakshinis, so beautiful that anyone would fall for them. But keeping them pleased wasn't easy. If they got angry, destruction was inevitable. Still, John had staked his entire life for this one Yakshini. He had even ignored his guru's warnings and had begun this ritual on his own. John was now about 36 or 37 years old and had never married. His family constantly pressured him to get married, but his heart only beat for Lisa. His entire world was now devoted to this ritual. The night grew darker. Suddenly, John began to sense strange things around him. He heard the soft jingling of anklets echoing around his ritual circle. It felt as if someone was approaching him and then trying to touch him. Then a sweet, melodious laughter filled the air, sending shivers through his body. He felt an urge to open his eyes to see who it was, but he knew that doing so would break his ritual, so he controlled himself and continued chanting. After several hours, when the 10th day was finally over, John slowly opened his eyes. Silence enveloped the area, and no one was in sight. Exhausted, John lay down at the ritual site and drifted off to sleep without even realizing it. It must have been around 1 or 2 in the morning when he had a terrifying dream. He saw a woman in a red sari sitting with her back toward him. In a soft voice, John asked, "Who are you?" The woman laughed without turning around, and her laughter carried a mysterious power. She softly said, "I am the one you've wanted since childhood. I am her." John's heart began to race. He realized this was Lisa. Excitement filled his voice. "You've come!" Lisa's laughter deepened, and in a cold tone, she said, "Not yet. Your ritual is not yet complete. You have not mastered me yet." John's breath caught in his throat. He understood that the real game was yet to begin, and in this game, his life and death were at stake. "But seeing your determination, it seems you will indeed master me." Lisa's words slipped from her lips, and she suddenly vanished. John jolted awake. He was lying on the ground, and from the bushes outside the circle, he heard a faint rustling sound. Steadying himself, he thought, perhaps it's just a wild animal, and reassured himself before drifting off to sleep again. It was the evening of the next day. John, fully prepared, resumed his meditation. Lost in the chanting of his mantras, his eyes were closed. But then, suddenly, he felt a light touch on his shoulder. The touch was so delicate that a shiver ran down his spine, spreading throughout his body. The hand slowly slid from his shoulders to his back. John tried to remain calm so as not to break his chanting, but with each passing moment, he was sinking deeper into that strange sensation. Just as he reached the final stage of his chant, he felt someone sit in his lap. The air had turned cold, and in an instant, a powerful slap struck his cheek. John's head rang, but he didn't stop chanting. Then it felt as if sharp claws had dug into his chest. He started to feel pain all over his body, and it seemed as if warm drops of blood were dripping from his skin. But he remained engrossed in his meditation, and because in his mind there was only Lisa's face. He wanted to master her no matter what. Suddenly, someone yanked his hair hard, and a woman's insane laughter echoed in his ears. Now, John was certain. It was Lisa. Her excited voice seemed to be mocking him, but John didn't abandon his meditation. He told himself, "No matter what happens, I won't stop." Lisa was trying her best to distract him. Her half-naked body kept brushing against John, and he could feel her breath on his face. All of this was mentally disturbing him, but he held his ground. He knew that even a moment's distraction would ruin his ritual, and his dream of mastering Lisa would shatter. Somehow John controlled himself. For 3 to 4 hours, these strange events continued, those touches, those bizarre sounds, and his test of willpower. Finally, John performed the last chant. At that moment, Lisa's sweet laughter filled the air, and she said, "Very well, your ritual has pleased me. John, you have mastered me." John slowly opened his eyes, and what he saw took his breath away. The most beautiful woman in the world was standing in front of him. Long black hair, sparkling eyes, soft lips, and a body beyond imagination. John was left speechless by her beauty. Seeing the astonishment in his eyes, Lisa smiled and said, "What happened? Can't believe you've mastered me?" John said, "Ever since I heard about you, I've wanted to master you. I've wanted to marry you." Lisa laughed again and said, "Yes, I will marry you, but first, there are some conditions you must agree to." John immediately replied, "I accept all your conditions. Tell me, what do you want?" Lisa said, "The first condition is that you must marry me right now, at this very moment." John had hoped to marry her in front of his family, but he agreed to her request. Then Lisa said, "The second condition is that you will never look at any other woman but me, and the third condition is that no one, except you, should ever know who I really am." John was overjoyed and said, "I accept all your conditions." John had never imagined that his life would change so suddenly. The very Lisa he had only seen in his dreams had now become his wife. A few hours after their marriage, they decided it was time to go home. However, John felt uneasy about Lisa's attire, realizing he couldn't take her home in the clothes she was wearing. He quickly went to the market and bought a beautiful sari. Lisa put it on, and John set off with her towards his home. But on the way, he felt a strange chill in the air, as if the wind had suddenly changed its nature. With every step, his heart began to beat faster. Was it the excitement of his new life, or something else? When they arrived home, John loudly called out to his mother, "Mother, look who I've brought." Shraddha, Vra, Vivek, and Rohini rushed outside, and as soon as they saw Lisa, their faces turned pale. In a trembling voice, Rohini asked, "Brother, who is this?" With a strange smile, John replied, "Don't you recognize your sister-in-law? I got married. This is Lisa." Shraddha, shocked, said, "Married? But son, how is this possible?" Vivek, now angry, demanded, "How could you marry without telling us? Wouldn't we have arranged it for you?" Shraddha's face had turned white, as if gripped by an unknown fear, but John quickly changed the topic, saying, "Mother, the circumstances were such that I had to get married immediately." Rohini quietly approached Lisa and asked, "Sister-in-law, do your parents know that you've married?" With a cold smile, Lisa replied, "I am alone in this world." Upon hearing those words, the atmosphere grew even heavier. Shraddha, shaking, said, "Now you are one of us." She then instructed Rohini, "Take her to the room." When Rohini took Lisa's hand, her eyes widened with fear. Lisa's hand was as cold as ice. She said nothing and led Lisa to the room. That night, when John entered his room, he was shocked. Lisa was sitting on the bed, completely unclothed, with an unfamiliar glimmer in her eyes, as if hiding something. John tried to approach her, but then he felt something strange. There were whispering sounds coming from the walls, as if shadows were crawling on them. Lisa pulled him towards her, her cold fingers gripping his body. John's breath stopped, his eyes fixed on Lisa's, but there was now something in those eyes he had never seen before, a terrifying truth. The next day was Lisa's Matdikhai, a ceremony where the bride is introduced to the family, but no one was prepared for what was about to happen. Rohini was helping Lisa get ready. John's friends who used to mock him for not getting married were coming over. John was happy. knowing that Lisa's beauty would leave them speechless. And indeed, when his friends arrived and saw Lisa, they were awestruck by her beauty, with even AJ, John's closest friend, jokingly asking, "John, which temple did you visit to get such a beautiful wife?" John, smiling, replied, "It's all about luck, brother." He felt incredibly happy. Even the neighbors couldn't stop praising Lisa's beauty, and seeing this, Shraddha was pleased as well. A few days passed this way, with John and Lisa completely lost in each other. They spent the entire day together, as if addicted to one another. However, John had stopped paying attention to his work, spending most of his time with Lisa in their room, which did not sit well with Shraddha. One day, Shraddha called John and asked, "What is going on? Why aren't you going to the shop with your father? How long will he manage everything alone? I understand you're newly married, but that doesn't mean you should never leave the room. Go to the shop and tell your father to come home for lunch." John didn't want to go, but he went anyway. As soon as he left, Lisa entered the kitchen. Seeing her, Shraddha said, "So, your feet have finally touched the kitchen floor. You should cook today. If you need anything, just ask me." With that, Shraddha went back to her work. Lisa gave her a strange look, which Rohini noticed. Rohini asked, "What happened, sister-in-law? Why are you staring at mother like that? You are the daughter-in-law of this house now, so you'll have to fulfill your responsibilities. Let me help you." After that, both Lisa and Rohini got to work. When the meal was ready, Vivek returned home. Standing at the door, he said, "I'm not feeling well today. I won't be able to go to the shop. John will return after closing the shop tonight." As soon as Lisa heard this, she froze. Her expression changed in an instant, as if a deep fire had been ignited within her. Her eyes gleamed strangely, and she began to stare at Vivek. Sensing the tension, Rohini lightened the mood by saying, "No worries, sister-in-law. I'll take the food to brother." But Lisa, with an odd smile, said, "No, you won't. I will take it." Shraddha tried to stop her, saying, "You're tired. Let Rohini go." But Lisa ignored her as if she hadn't heard a word. She picked up the food and walked briskly towards the shop. When John saw her at the door, his eyes sparkled strangely. He quickly shut the shop door, and the cold air outside turned into a suffocating stillness inside. Lisa slowly moved towards John, and in a moment, the distance between them disappeared. John never imagined that his life would change so suddenly. The Lisa he only saw in his dreams had now become his wife. A few hours after the wedding, they decided it was time to go home. However, when John saw Lisa's clothes, a strange unease settled in his mind. He felt he couldn't take her home like that. He quickly went to the market and bought a beautiful sari. Lisa wore it, and John set off with her toward his house. On the way, he felt an unusual chill, as if the wind had suddenly changed its nature. With each step, John's heart began to beat faster. Was it the excitement of his new life, or something else? When they reached home, John called out loudly to his mother, "Mom, look who I've brought." Shraddha, Vivek, and Rohini rushed out in a hurry. As soon as they saw Lisa, their faces turned pale. Rohini asked in a trembling voice, "Brother, who is she?" John, with a strange smile, said, "Don't you recognize your sister-in-law? I've gotten married. This is Lisa." Shraddha, astonished, said, "Married? But how is that possible?" Vivek angrily said, "How could you get married without telling us? Couldn't we arrange your marriage?" Shraddha's face had turned pale, as if an unknown fear had gripped her. But John, changing the topic, said, "Mom, the circumstances were such that we had to marry immediately." Rohini softly approached Lisa and asked, "Sister-in-law, do your parents know that you've gotten married?" With a cold smile, Lisa replied, "I'm alone in this world." Hearing those words made the atmosphere even heavier. Trembling, Shraddha said, "Now you belong to us." She instructed Rohini, "Take her to the room." Rohini held Lisa's hand, but as soon as she touched it, her eyes widened in fear. Lisa's hand was as cold as ice. Without saying anything, Rohini led Lisa to the room. That night, when John went to his room, he was shocked. Lisa was sitting on the bed without any clothes, her eyes gleaming with a strange light, as if she were hiding something. John tried to approach her, but then he sensed something strange. There were rustling noises coming from the walls, as if shadows were crawling over them. Lisa pulled him toward her, her cold fingers gripping his body tightly. John's breath stopped. His gaze was fixed on Lisa's eyes, but there was something in them that he had never seen before, a terrifying truth. The next day was Lisa's first public appearance as the new bride, but no one was prepared for what was about to happen. Rohini was helping Lisa get ready. Some of John's friends, who always teased him for not being married, were coming over that day, but John was overjoyed, knowing that everyone would be stunned when they saw Lisa. And that's exactly what happened. When his friends arrived and saw Lisa, they were envious of her beauty. Ajay, John's closest friend, joked, "John, which temple did you visit to get such a beautiful wife?" Smiling, John replied, "It's just luck, my friend." He felt incredibly happy. The neighbors were also praising Lisa's beauty, and seeing this, Shraddha was extremely pleased. A few days passed like this, with John and Lisa becoming inseparable. They spent the entire day together, as if they were addicted to each other. But because of this, John had stopped focusing on his work. He spent most of his time in the room with Lisa, which did not sit well with Shraddha. One day, Shraddha called John and said, "What's going on? Why aren't you going to the shop with your father? How long will he work alone? I understand you've just gotten married, but that doesn't mean you never leave the room. Go to the shop and tell your father to come home for lunch." John didn't feel like going, but he left anyway. As soon as he left, Lisa came into the kitchen. Seeing her, Shraddha said, "Now that your feet have touched the kitchen, you should make today's meal. If you need anything, just ask me." Shraddha then got back to her work. Lisa gave her a strange look, which Rohini noticed. Rohini asked, "What happened, sister-in-law? Why are you staring at mom like that? You're the daughter-in-law of this house now, so you'll have to fulfill your responsibilities. Come on, I'll help you." After that, both Rohini and Lisa started cooking. As soon as the food was ready, Vivek came home. Standing at the door, he said, "I'm not feeling well today. I won't be able to go to the shop. John will close the shop at night and come home." The moment Lisa heard this, she froze. Her expression changed in an instant, as if a deep fire had ignited within her. Her eyes had a strange glint, and she started staring at Vivek. Sensing the tension, Rohini lightened the mood by saying, "It's okay, sister-in-law. I'll take the food to him." But Lisa, with an odd smile, said, "No, you won't go. I'll take it." Shraddha tried to stop her, saying, "You're tired, let Rohini go." But Lisa ignored her, as if she hadn't heard anything. She picked up the food and quickly headed toward the shop. When John saw her at the shop's door, his eyes sparkled with a strange light. He quickly locked the shop door behind her. The cold wind outside turned into stifling air inside the shop. Lisa slowly stepped toward John, and in an instant, like the distance between them, vanished. John never imagined that his life would change so suddenly. The Lisa he had only seen in his dreams was now his wife. A few hours after their wedding, they decided it was time to go home. However, when John saw Lisa's clothes, something felt off. He thought he couldn't take her home like that, so he quickly went to the market and bought a beautiful sari. Lisa wore the sari, and John started toward his house with her. But on the way, he felt a strange chill, as if the wind had suddenly changed. With each step, John's heart began to race. Was it excitement for his new life, or was it something else? When they reached home, John called out loudly, "Mom, look who I've brought!" Shraddha, Vivek, and Rohini rushed out, startled. As soon as they saw Lisa, their faces turned pale. Rohini, with a trembling voice, asked, "Brother, who is this?" With a strange smile, John replied, "Don't you recognize your sister-in-law? I got married. This is Lisa." Shraddha, shocked, said, "Married? But how is that possible?" Vivek, angry, said, "How could you get married without telling us? Wouldn't we have arranged it for you?" Shraddha's face had turned pale, as if gripped by an unknown fear. But John changed the topic and said, "Mom, the situation was such that I had to get married immediately." Rohini quietly approached Lisa and asked, "Sister-in-law, do your parents know that you got married?" With a cold smile, Lisa replied, "I am alone in this world." Hearing these words, the atmosphere became even heavier. Trembling, Shraddha said, "Well, now you are one of us." She then told Rohini, "Take her to her room." Rohini took Lisa's hand, but the moment she touched her, her eyes widened in fear. Lisa's hand was as cold as ice. Without saying anything, she led Lisa to the room. That night, when John went into his room, he was shocked to see Lisa sitting on the bed, unclothed, with an unusual gleam in her eyes, as if she was hiding something. John tried to approach her, but then he heard something. There were rustling noises coming from the walls, as if shadows were crawling on them. Lisa pulled him toward her. Her cold fingers gripped John's body tightly, and his breath caught in his throat. His gaze was locked on Lisa's eyes. But now there was something in them that he had never seen before, a terrifying truth. The next day was the ceremony to introduce Lisa to the family, but no one was prepared for what was about to happen. Rohini was helping Lisa get ready. John's friends, who always teased him for not getting married, were going to visit that day. But today, John was happy, knowing they would be stunned when they saw Lisa. Exactly that happened. When his friends arrived and saw Lisa, they were struck by her beauty. Ajay, John's closest friend, joked, "John, which temple did you visit to get such a beautiful wife?" Smiling, John replied, "It's all luck, my friend." He felt incredibly happy. The people in the neighborhood couldn't stop praising Lisa, and seeing this made Shraddha happy too. A few days passed like this, with John and Lisa completely lost in each other. They spent the entire day together, almost as if they were addicted to each other. Because of this, John had stopped focusing on his work. He spent most of his time with Lisa in the room, which Shraddha didn't like at all. One day, Shraddha called John and said, "What is this? Why don't you go to the shop and help your father? How long will he work alone? I know you've just gotten married, but that doesn't mean you won't leave the room. Go to the shop and tell your father to come home and have lunch." John didn't feel like going, but he went anyway. As soon as he left, Lisa entered the kitchen. Seeing her, Shraddha said, "So you've finally stepped into the kitchen. You should cook today, and if you need anything, just ask me." Saying this, Shraddha went back to her work. Lisa looked at her strangely, and Rohini noticed it. Rohini asked, "What happened, sister-in-law? Why are you staring at mom like that? You are the daughter-in-law of this house, so you need to take on your responsibilities. Let me help you." After they prepared the meal, Vivek returned home. Standing at the door, he said, "I'm not feeling well today, so I won't be able to go to the shop. John will close it and come home tonight." Hearing this, Lisa froze. Her expression changed in an instant, as if a fire had ignited inside her. Her eyes had a strange glimmer, and she started staring at Vivek. Just then, Rohini lightened the mood by saying, "No worries, sister-in-law. I'll take the food to brother." But Lisa immediately replied with a strange smile, "No, you won't go. I'll take it." Shraddha tried to stop her, saying, "You're tired. Let Rohini take it." Ignoring her, Lisa picked up the food and walked swiftly toward the shop. When John saw her at the door, a strange light flickered in his eyes. He quickly shut the shop door behind her. The cool outside air turned into suffocating heat inside the shop as Lisa slowly moved toward John. In an instant, the distance between them vanished. But the atmosphere outside the shop wasn't entirely quiet. Slowly, people passing by began to stop and listen. The soft noises coming from inside were mysterious, as if something strange was happening. People began to whisper and gossip, and soon the news reached Shraddha. By the time Lisa returned home around 5 p.m., Shraddha was already waiting, her face red with anger. She asked in a sharp voice, "Why did you take so long to come back?" Lisa calmly replied, "There were many customers at the shop, so I got delayed." But the anger on Shraddha's face deepened. She sternly said, "I sent you to deliver food, not to stay in the shop. What were you doing there? From now on, you will stay away from John. You're becoming a distraction to him at work. You'll sleep in the kitchen from now on." A cold smile appeared on Lisa's face, hinting at something else. She protested, "But he is my husband. What's wrong with being with him?" Shraddha, in a strict tone, said, "Learn to behave properly, or else." Lisa bowed her head and said nothing, but there was something in her eyes that no one noticed. Around 9 p.m., when John came home, he saw Lisa sitting alone in the kitchen, her eyes glinting with that same strange light he had seen before. He approached her and asked, "What's wrong? Why are you sitting here?" In an angry voice, Lisa replied, "Your mother told me to stay away from you. She knows what we were doing in the shop." John took a deep breath. He knew Shraddha wouldn't give in easily, but in a calm voice, he said, "It's okay. I'll sleep here too. Mom won't even know." Lisa's smile widened at this. The coldness of the night began to spread throughout the house. John's words sent a chill down Shraddha's spine, and she stood there frozen, drenched in sweat, as Lisa walked away. A few more days passed. One morning, Shraddha noticed that Rohini didn't look well. Her eyes were weak, and her face had turned pale. Concerned, Shraddha asked, "Rohini, what's wrong? Why do you look so weak?" In a soft voice, Rohini replied, "Mom, I've been throwing up for days, and my whole body aches." Shraddha panicked, but then she noticed a strange smile on Lisa's face, as if she was enjoying the situation. John also saw this and asked Lisa sternly, "Why are you smiling? Do you have something to do with Rohini's illness?" Lisa slowly let out a cold laugh and said, "Anyone who tries to come between us will face consequences." John's face filled with rage. "She's my sister. Don't touch my family. They are not your enemies." Anger flared in Lisa's eyes, but she said nothing. She grabbed John's hand and pulled him toward the room, her eyes burning with an eerie fire. John tried to pull away, but Lisa's anger grew, and she forcefully took control of him. Her eyes gleamed, and she held John tight. Fear and anxiety flickered in John's eyes, but slowly, his emotions started to change, as though he was falling under Lisa's spell. Sometime later, when they emerged from the room, Shraddha and Rohini had already returned home. Tears filled Shraddha's eyes, and with a trembling voice, she said, "John, the doctor told us Rohini has cancer. Her treatment will cost a lot. What are we going to do?" John's face remained cold and expressionless. He looked at Shraddha but said nothing and started to walk away. Shraddha grabbed his hand, panic rising in her chest. "Where are you going? Did you not hear what I said? Your sister's condition." John abruptly interrupted her, grabbing her hair and yanking it hard. Shraddha screamed in pain. In a rage, John said, "This is your and your daughter's problem. Don't drag me into this." Shraddha and Rohini stood there, shocked as if they had been slapped. With a trembling voice, Rohini asked, "Brother, what's happened to you? How can you treat Mom like this?" John glared at her angrily. "Shut up. Always sucking up to your mother. It's good you got this disease." Tears welled up in Rohini's eyes. "Do you even realize what you're saying? I'm dying, and you're saying such things?" In response, John violently shoved both Shraddha and Rohini. Just then, Vivek entered, and upon seeing the scene, he lost his temper. He slapped John hard and said, "Ingrate, is this what I taught you? You're doing all this because of that woman?" Fire blazed in John's eyes, and in a fit of rage, he shouted, "Don't say anything about my wife." Vivek, equally enraged, said, "Or what? Will you hit your father too?" Hearing this, John actually shoved Vivek down and began kicking him. Shraddha and Rohini tried to intervene, but John was beyond reason. He kept attacking his father. Then he grabbed a stick nearby and started beating his father, mother, and sister mercilessly. The house echoed with cries of pain, and neighbors, hearing the commotion, rushed to the scene. When they arrived, they were horrified by what they saw. John was attacking his family, and Lisa stood nearby, smiling. The villagers managed to subdue John and locked him in a room. Shraddha, Vivek, and Rohini were seriously injured and were rushed to the doctor. At the hospital, Shraddha, her voice shaking, said, "That woman must have done some black magic on our son. We need help." Vivek nodded and said, "Yes, our son would never act this way." Just then, a villager suggested, "If that's the case, you should immediately visit Shraddhanan Baba." Shraddha asked, "Who is he?" Midnight had already fallen when the villager said, "He is a powerful occultist. He recently arrived in the nearby village and lives in the cremation grounds. He has deep knowledge of all these mysterious things." Trembling, Shraddha, Vivek, and Rohini agreed and went to the cremation grounds. The eerie silence was overwhelming, but suddenly a dark figure appeared. It was Baba. Shraddha, in a trembling voice, told him everything. Baba chanted some mantras and closed his eyes. After a few moments, he opened them and said in a grave tone, "I need to come to your house to see what's going on." Shraddha quickly nodded and said, "Yes, Baba, please come. I don't know what has happened to my son. He, who never raised his voice at us, threatened to kill us today." A deep line of worry appeared on Baba's face, and he slowly said, "If my suspicion is correct, it may be too late to save your son. Even I might not be able to do anything." Hearing this, fear spread in Shraddha, Vivek, and Rohini's hearts, and they accompanied Baba back to the house. As soon as they arrived, they heard terrifying screams coming from John's room, filled with some unknown agony. Their hearts raced as Baba tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge, as if some invisible force was holding it shut. Suddenly, the screams stopped and the door flew open with a violent jolt. What What they saw inside was nothing short of a nightmare. John's eyes were wide open, but there was no life in them. His body had shriveled into a skeleton, as if something had drained him dry. An eerie coldness and silence filled the room. Taking a deep breath, Baba said, "It's too late." She took him. The ground slipped from under Shraddha's feet, and a wave of fear and grief washed over Rohini and Vivek. John's love story had ended in this very room, but his soul, perhaps Lisa, had taken it to her dark world. And so the terrifying love story of John and Lisa came to an end in this world. But the question remained, had she really left this world, or was someone else next in her sights? So friends, today's story ends here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share the video. See you next time.